sure you're happy about that.
Yeah. Hey, what's happening, guys? Happy Monday. Just got a chance to talk a little football. Obviously, I'm in a better mood than you after this weekend. Excited for next week, man. So we'll talk more about football as the week progresses. What we're going to do today for this early 3-game slate is we're just going to kind of just do like a members-only video for everybody. We'll get into more traditional stuff throughout the rest of the week and everything like that. But with the double slate today for MLK Day and everything like that, we'll just slide this over. If you want to thank us for it, we appreciate it. Real simple. Just click the thumbs up button, and all new monthly members today get half of their first month reimbursed to them. It's called Monthly Monday.
I'll tell you what, I got a couple really interesting games on this slate.
Right? So, I mean, there's DFS appeal in all of these games. So, as far as a 3-game stretch goes, it's not one of those things where like you're searching for guys you like.
Right.
Like, you can really run multiple lineups on this one with, multiple options. So we'll go game by game like we traditionally do and things like that. Go through the ins and the outs of them. Have a little fun with it. Wish everybody best of luck today. So we'll start with Minnesota against Atlanta, which has a total of 228-ish right now. Atlanta's favored to win by about 7.5. So, we've seen blowouts everywhere, all over the NBA this year. If anybody blew this game out, I would expect it to be Atlanta, but gosh, who knows in the NBA in the modern day?
Yeah, and I mean, Atlanta's not playing well still. They had that one win against Philly. I think this game's going to be competitive. Overall, if I had to pick one game that's my favorite on the slate, it's this one.
I can make some good cases for all these games, but I do like this game a lot. So we know about today is there's no Karl Anthony Towns. Juancho Hernan-Gomez is out. Gallinari is questionable. Bogdanovich is out. Reddish is questionable, et cetera, et cetera. So we do have some pieces that we were waiting on.
I think Gallinari's more doubtful.
Yeah. Even if this dude played, you're not going to get a bunch out of him. So just assume he's out, right? That's the safest way to evaluate.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody from this game specifically that you really, really dig as a player?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Trae Young, D'Angelo Russell. Clearly, I really like Dame. Also, we'll get to Dame. I like Trae and D'Angelo a lot. Also, like Vanderbilt quite a bit. Okogie. I think there's a lot of pieces in play in this game.
I think this game appeals to me a little bit more from a 30,000-foot view. And I really like the idea of Minnesota to Atlanta, but from the individual play, like for me, it's a real struggle. And there's a reason I made the cover last night and put Damian Lillard on it. I get all the points for D'Angelo Russell and Trae Young, but Damian Lillard with no CJ McCollum, to me, that's my favorite of the guards. So I would struggle to roster these two guys right here. And Russell would be more likely to make my lineup simply because he has shooting guard eligibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can play all three of them together.
It's hypothetical. Rondo is back for Atlanta. Not looking to give him a roster spot. He's not somebody I'm locking in or anything like that. But if you're desperate for somebody really, really cheap, if he could play 19 minutes like he has in a couple other games against this Minnesota team, you could see a replication of what he did game 1 against Detroit. But again, not somebody I'm looking to lock in or anything like that.
No, they're giving Brandon Goodwin run too, so I think that might be why his minutes aren't up.
Yeah. And I think the long game is with Rajon Rondo. He's out there to be a little bit more of a leader, so you're not trying to force him into big minutes. As far as Trae Young, it's been a weird couple set of games. He was really good against Philly. Ended up not having a great score because he didn't play in the fourth quarter, but that's clearly not on him. He was god-awful against Utah. If you watch the Portland-Atlanta game, the Atlanta announcers kept talking about it. Looked like a different guy the next day. Now, even though he shot 7-23 and 1-9, he still had 11 assists. He played pretty well in that game. I watched a lot of that game, and I didn't really notice he shot that poorly until I just looked at it.
Yeah, I didn't either. I know he played well in that game. I like him continuing to play well. Minnesota offers nothing in the way of defense. So
he is pricey again, though.
He is. But, I mean, I like him a lot here. I think this is a definite upside spot.
Yeah. He hasn't shown much upside this year, but if there was a spot to do it, God, this is it. Minnesota's backcourt defense is atrocious. He should be able to boogie on them all day long. So
also Capella, who balled last time out, and now against Minnesota, shorthanded on the front court, definitely can get on board with Capella.
Right. So I called out John Collins the other day as the long shot because you were off on Saturday. Mm-hmm. I like the idea of going to a post guy against Portland with no Joseph Nurkic. And I couldn't get to Capella because not playing Dwight Howard and Enes Kanter was almost impossible to me. And those guys were both fantastic. But Capella was a beast against Portland. So I want to side note that for a second, guys. With Nurkic out of the way in Portland, I think it's great to pay attention to like quality centers against Portland, probably for the rest of the year. So just keep your eyes on that because he did whatever he wanted.
He was a monster. Maybe one of the best games of his career.
Yeah, I mean, they were talking about it throughout the broadcast that 31 points is his career high, and he was going for that. And, obviously he didn't quite get there, but he played really, really well. He was a beast. But picking on Portland with big men is going to be a thing for a while. His price tag is now up there, though, 7,500. And while he could eat right here, it's harder to spend that much money on him.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend that on him. But I'll say this about Trae Young. No Cam Reddish helped him for sure.
Reddish is once again questionable. I played Red Velvet in this game. He's now another guy with monsters maybe a bit aggressive. He's all the way up to almost 6K. And if Reddish is out again today, I kind of expect him to start. But, I'm not trying to spend $5,700 on Herder. I know he's capable of showing upside, especially in a spot like this. But that's a lot of money to spend on Red Velvet.
I agree. And then, yeah, man, the Minnesota guys, I feel similarly, like coming off the bench, I think you could make cases for Naz Reid and Anthony Edwards. I know a guy you've mentioned a couple of times, Edwards, hasn't done it a lot. But as we've said, if there's going to be a guy that like have a big game off the bench, it's this guy.
Right, so he's taken a hit to his game recently, right? But now there's no Ricky Rubio or Karl Anthony Towns, which means they need more pop from the second unit. And without Towns around, this weakens the whole team, right? There's just they don't have a lot of sources for offense. So I would expect his minutes to get back up. You're the number one overall pick. We got to get you established and rolling. He shot 1 of 14 the last 2 games. That won't keep up forever. He's not NBA ready like Halliburton seems to be or LaMelo Ball, but clearly he's better than that. So I like the idea of a bounce back spot right here. Also, he's 4,600, which is, I think, probably the cheapest he's been all year.
Yeah, he's definitely in play. I mean, again, I don't disagree with you about the 30,000 foot view, but I can also get on board with a game stack, and just, sell my soul on this game. I think there's a bunch of pieces in play. Side note, I don't know how much NBA you watched last night, but it seems like the Kings unleashed Marvin Bagley.
Yeah, I actually watched almost that entire game.
He was awesome.
I had quite a few Pelicans in play that game. Just a little upset I didn't play De'Aaron Fox, who was that's about as good of a game as De'Aaron Fox could play. That was fantastic.
Yeah, they were awesome. He was awesome for sure.
So I do think like Culver and Okogie can probably get some attention from the industry. Like these guys are so uninspiring to me. I struggle to ever put him in my roster. It's just really hard to spend 4K on Jarrett Culver. I know, I'd rather go to Anthony Edwards, who I think if you're looking for 30 spot, it's just to me, I just think it's a better opportunity right there.
I agree with that. And I would play Okogie over Culver. And I still think, I know he's a little more expensive, but I would play Naz Reid over both of them too. So yeah, only center.
So let's get back to these big guys because we just saw this like a week or two ago for a while with Karl Anthony Towns out, and they were in and out of the starting lineup with Naz Reid. Ed Davis started for a while, but the guy that we kept talking about in his power forward eligibility is this kid Vanderbilt, who, I mean, he puts up DFS points in a hurry. They gave him 21 and 23 minutes against Denver and Portland on the 5th and the 7th. He went for 30 points each day. I love the power forward eligibility right here. I also like that he's going to run some time probably with the second unit, so he doesn't have to deal with Capella quite as much, which is their stronger suit for defending the rim. I think he's a sleeper today. I think you get him at probably very low ownership. I like him in GPPs, but it does come with risk, though, clearly.
Yeah, the only thing I disagree is that the ownership. He's getting traction. He's been kind of like an industry darling a little bit, especially because you might see him starting. So if that's the case, I mean, you would talk about that all the time. Ownership will spike. If he's coming off the bench, he's just not going to be that high owned no matter what.
And it's the first game, so you're going to know. But we also know with Minnesota, because there's one of the worst teams in basketball, they're all over the place with what they're doing, man. Their starting lineup will change a little bit. Now they're back without Towns. They're dealing with this COVID stuff with no Wancho. He could slide into the 4. We'll watch and see what they do. But you're right. If he's starting, he becomes chalk instantly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we just saw Miami play Detroit the other day. Give much love to my boy Jeremy Grant. Did not get a lot of ownership that day, but he balled for all of us. So thank you, Jeremy. I like him today. I just got a little lucky with this call the other day. He ain't going to go for 58 again, right? He got 4 blocks. That's as many blocks as he had That's more blocks than he had in the previous 4 games. He averages like a block a game. That's not what's likely to happen. I think he had a season high with 6 assists. Yeah, he's usually more of like a 2-assist type of fella. So he worked out that day, but like I'm not trying to point chase right here. I don't think he's a bad play. I just don't think like he's just going to automatically replicate this.
Yeah, that's not for me, but listen, he was really good, no doubt.
I mean, I said on the video on Saturday, like I never in my wildest dreams expected Jeremy Grant because like ESPN had him projected really well, like on year-long fantasy drafts for him to be this good. And I realized it's a completely different role for him. I didn't think he was a 42 DraftKings points per game guy. Never in a million years. Even after watching it the other day after I called him out, I still struggle to believe this. He's shooting the 3 ball at an extremely high clip. He's doing a little bit of everything for this team. It's been a revelation. It's still really hard to stomach paying $8,200 for him.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Interesting, this same game again, I think is the only difference that Hero might play.
That's the big difference, right? He's considered questionable right now. Again, all these games start relatively around the same time, so hopefully you should have good news about that one prior. Miami's going to be a little bit of a tough nut to crack. Dragic was a guy I called out for the write-up the other day. Like, he was okay. He did not play well. Miami didn't play well as a whole. They were so short-handed, though, which is important to note, that he was back in at the end with the blowout run going. So as much as I don't think he's a must, if they're super short-handed with no Hero again today, it's hard to picture him playing much worse.
I agree with that.
Derrick Rose was a beast in this game the other day. I still massively prefer him in GPPs. He's had a couple of really good games this year, and he's had a bunch of stinkers.
Mm-hmm. I don't trust this game at all. I don't know what to expect from it. I guess that the KZ Okpala at 3K or 3,200 or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I just like that first game a lot more than this one.
Yeah, so with KZ, he started the other day, played 27 minutes, got 19 DK points, which is fine. He also shot 4 or 5 from 3, guys, that's hard to replicate. There's a reason even great shooters like Steph Curry don't shoot 80%. 0 steals, 0 blocks, 1 assist, 1 rebound. So I think if you're point chasing it, I think there's a good opportunity. This may not work out for you, but as far as 3,200 players go, I mean, at least there's a good chance he could be starting again.
Yeah, exactly. Probably rather use like an Anthony Simons, but
yeah,
there's just another value piece to mark down.
Yeah, and I mean that's only the thing. If you're really trying to go straight studs, and you're talking like you mentioned that you like all the guards, Lillard, Trae Young, and D'Angelo Russell. If you're trying to get there, then maybe it's a play. But I don't know. I'm more likely to fade one of those 3 players.
That's fine. I mean, I get that for sure. I haven't really built my rosters yet, so that could easily be what I do too.
And what about Tyler Hero if he's playing?
Yeah, he's definitely in play, but I don't think I want to prioritize him for 7,300.
Yeah, so he busted the second game against Philly because they got rolled, which is kind of what we called for. So at least we got that blowout, right? And he didn't play in the fourth quarter. So he had been playing well. I don't know. I don't know how healthy he is. It's difficult to talk about this one. I think he's in play, but not a must.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, do play him if you want to do your thing. Like, I mean, if you like this game, you play Hero, Jeremy Grant. Like, this game could be really close. It's just not for me. I like the first game and the second game more, or in the last game, excuse me.
So I'm with you on that account. I think there's more trustworthiness because of the better quality of players, and there's not just Detroit's terrible. I mean, I think you guys all know that. Miami is just can't stay healthy.
If Hero's out, I could go right back to Kendrick Nunn, though, who is not very good. But, we know he's not bashful. He's under 4K.
The shooting guard eligibility helps a ton.
Exactly. So it's all it is.
He did play 27 minutes. He was not good while he played. More turnovers than assist, 5-1. But, shooting guard eligibility helps.
And like what you said about Okpala, like, it feels like that's like not maybe his upside, but like it's unlikely he's going to do way better than that. We've seen Nunn like 10x at that price before. Not often, but we know he has that in him.
And if Tyler Hero plays, then he's not a thing really at all for me.
Agreed.
And I guess the other guy who did play well he just was another guy. He couldn't make my roster because it was impossible for me not to roster Dwight Howard and Canner in my main lineup. And then I like some Tony Bradley as a GPP pivot. So like I also couldn't get to Bam. Well, Bam lost run 2 in the fourth quarter as they were getting blowout, and he was awesome. So I could definitely go to Bam because he's just a fantastic player who's got to do a ton for this team right now.
Agreed.
So I know you're a big Bam fan. Talking you into him is not difficult because unlike a lot of these other players, he's actually really good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we move over to the last game, San Antonio against Portland. Again, Nurkic is out. CJ McCollum is out. I think for me, Dame's a lock unless you think this game gets lopsided.
Yeah, I mean, I like San Antonio in this game a lot, so I'm not going to call for the road team to roll here. So I like Dame a lot.
Okay. As long as you think the game is competitive, you should at least be interested in Damian Lillard. He's got a big role here today. He has played better often recently. I know like he wasn't good against Indiana, but the whole team played terrible that day. You had a motivated Indiana team. He balled on Sacramento. He balled on Atlanta. He was awful in the first quarter in this game too.
Yeah, I mean, more the question is like I think Dame's an obvious strong play without McCollum. It's more like, are you spending $6,300 on Cantor, like Simons, etc., Trent?
All right, so Cantor was great for me the other day. He's on my good side right now. He's not a 5 blocks a game guy, but he is a 12 and 15 guy pretty easily. So there's a lot of games where I don't think I'd want him for 6,300. But against San Antonio, with their lack of post presence, knowing that there's no CJ in there, like I think they're going to need him today. So I do like him again today, even though I don't expect 51 points again.
I like him, but he's far from a must for me.
Yeah, I think the big thing with Cantor is if I told you he was playing 29 minutes for sure, you'd probably lock him in, but you don't trust the minutes because, well, we've all played this game before and we've all been burnt by it.
Well, he's also over 6K now. So, like, I think you saw the upside game from him last time. He's not a 2-steal guy either, so you can almost take 14 points off that. And then he's fine, but I don't think he's a must at all. And, 12, 15, and 3 is like a real good game for him. So I could easily see him having 30 DK points here and being fine.
I will probably play him, and I'll probably be scared while I'm doing it. I think that's the best way to look at it because if he plays 30 minutes, I think throughout his career he's been, damn near a 1.5 player per minute. But like, I'm not. If I play him, like I'm just worried like he's not in there.
1.5's like Giannis, point per minute player.
He eats when he's out there. I'm super worried about playing him, and I get more worried they play small.
Same.
Against a San Antonio team that doesn't play a center, that he plays terrible defense and they get him out of there. That's my biggest concern with him. He's always eaten when he's been out there, but we've all been burned by Enes Kanter so many times in our life that it's really difficult to like put him in your roster and not be terrified.
We view this a little differently because he's not priced up though. Like even if he plays the minutes, like I think he could get 30 to 35 DK points. I mean, he's not a 1.5 per minute guy. That's like Giannis territory. He's a point per minute guy. I don't know, maybe a little bit higher than that. I think he's a fine play. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he's like some sort of lock. The only like kind of wrench thrown in this is that Podol played big minutes for San Antonio, big like last time out. And if they're running that lineup, then Cantor will play big minutes here.
Yeah, I think they were doing whatever they could to try to stop Christian Wood, who was balling in this game, and they didn't really have an answer for him. So Wood ate on them twice in a row. Houston beat there's a couple of really good games right here. And I think they were just trying to stop Christian Wood, so they were just like, well, let's try this. And he had a great game, but like, do you trust Pop to play him 30 minutes again? No, thank you.
Agreed, but my point, yeah, exactly. But it makes me even a little more interested in Cantor. On all of this though, like I think one of the guys I like the most is LaMarcus Aldridge. I don't see any way that Portland stops him here.
Derrick Jones Jr.
Yeah. I mean, and listen, Aldridge is far from what he used to be, but he's coming off 2 awful games. He had played pretty well before that. I think that it's wow. Now that I'm looking at this, like I like Aldridge. He is the same price as Cantor. For some reason, I feel safer with Aldridge, even though he's been so bad the past 2 games. And I think Cantor has higher upside. My mind is going to explode. I'm not sure what to think right now.
Aldridge is really good when DeRozan was out. So I'm not as interested in LaMarcus. Did he get hurt last game too? I wasn't watching this one, and he
I
only
don't
played
think so.
17 minutes. Probably just can play defense on
Wood.
Christian Wood, who's fantastic, and I still would look really good in a Bucks jersey right now. But
Yeah.
so as far as the rest of this game goes, anybody else from San Antonio that really tickles your fancy? They're a tough nut to crack because like DeRozan's had obviously a very, very good season. He's also priced up at 9K, which is a lot for him.
They have no injuries and they're priced up, so it's hard to get there.
Love the matchup.
I love the matchup too. I always like Dejounte Murray and DeRozan. They're expensive though. So
So I want to throw a curveball your way. We talked about if you don't like Enes Kanter and you think they might play small, what about Melo and Robert Covington?
yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense.
So I think the big thing with the watch right now with Portland guys is because they probably don't have the answer themselves, right? Like Enes Kanter is a much better fantasy player than he is real life player, which is why he constantly gets shipped around the league and teams lose interest in him really, really quickly because you want a big man that can protect the rim. And while his rebounding is great, he doesn't protect the rim at all, which is why he falls out of favor with coaches and literally every team he's ever played for. So the idea of them playing small against the San Antonio team that doesn't really run a traditional center, I think is a real thing. And that's where like Robert Covington and like a dirt cheap Melo, who's mostly been trashed this year, but we know has upside in 4,400, I think is an intriguing GPP pivot.
Yeah, and honestly, like the more I think about it, the more uneasy I am not playing Canner. Like I think that everything I said is true. He could easily play a good game here and have 30 to 35 DK points, but I do have to acknowledge the other side that he just might be too cheap right now for the role he has. And there's every possibility that he could be a 40 DK point guy in matchups that are, not facing like an elite center. And this is one of those matchups. So yeah, it's not an easy call there.
I think there's a good chance that Canner's, because again, he could easily do 50 points again because he could also score 25 points today as opposed to only 12. And it is a risky fade. If he plays well early and Portland views it as a mismatch they can take advantage of without CJ, without Nurkic, and needing a little bit of help offensively for Dame, then he might play 30, 35 minutes today. If he's getting burnt on the inside, not protecting the rim and not scoring, that's where they might go small. So we can all theorize things here at 9:50 a.m. Central Time, but a lot of this to me is going to come down to how the first quarter plays and how Portland wants to do it. The fact that CJ and Nurkic is out, I think is good for him because they're going to need, Dame can do a lot, but, Robert Covington, not a great offensive player. Melo, not what he used to be. Like, they're going to need some help somewhere from somebody.
Yeah, and kind of on that note, like I know this isn't a big guy, but I like Anthony Simons. A guy that has the ball in his hands. He's my favorite of the cheaper guys.
Not turned off at all by the fact he played 8 minutes the other day?
No, not really. I think that he's, going to be a part of the rotation today, like for sure, for sure. They need him, with no CJ.
I think we'll see Gary Trent Jr. probably in the starting lineup would be my guess. Like he'll be a lock for me at either the 2 or the 3. I love the position flexibility right here. And for all the cheap guys that we talked about, like a Koji and Culver, I feel the safest with him because he fills that CJ role. I mean, he's not as good as CJ, but he can fill that CJ role pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he'll probably be, I don't know who will be starting for them, but he's 4K. He's fine.
Yeah, and if he's starting, he's going to be huge chalk.
Agreed.
And they got other guys like Rodney Hood played 13 minutes the other day. He's kind of back in the rotation now as another one of those like wing jump shooters that this could be a situation that they ride the hot hand. If Hood makes a couple of threes in the second quarter, he could play 25 minutes. If he shoots 0 of 5 and he's playing terribly defensively, he might be completely out of the second half rotation.
Agreed. And they, guy Derek Jones Jr., kind of that same mold, not as good of a shooter, but they trust him to play minutes at least.
Yeah, because he's an excellent elite defensive player. So at least he gets to stay in there because he's adding something to it. I think that's a kind of a cool call right there. He's only 3,800. You can play him in either forward position. With CJ out in the second half the other day, he played big minutes. Again, he is a fantastic defender, which is why they went out to get him because that was their weakness. Same reason they went out to get Covington. And even though he's not a great offensive player, he has his moments. We've seen him hit a couple threes in the game before. He's a Skywalker, so he's fun to watch at the very least.
Yeah, I prefer him to those Akoji and Jared Culvers of the world for sure.
So like I think like how much Portland is too much. And I don't want to go any deeper than about 4.
That's
But
way too much for me personally. Like I like that first game. I'm fine stacking. I'm not going to go this deep on Portland. I don't love this spot for them. I think they lose this game. I think they might get rolled here.
okay. I'll give them credit at home to stay competitive. And that's about as deep as I would go because I do think this is about your starting lineup right here. Now, if you think the game's not competitive, I mean, I think the Gary Trent, assuming he's starting, and Enes Kanter like sits, and even the Damian kind of fade if you feel like this game gets overlooked. Because I'm assuming Lillard is like big time shock today.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Again, he is like 10K also. We talked about Trae Young, how he's a little priced up. If that game's close and this game's not, Young will outscore Lillard, in my opinion. If both games are close, I like Lillard slightly over Young. But if the first one's close and this one's not, it's Young all day.
Well, I think there's some leverage there in GPPs. Like if you think that there's an opportunity for San Antonio to roll, then getting away from some of these chalkier Portland guys, because Portland's going to garner a lot of attention today. Solid matchup with San Antonio, not missing CJ McCollum and Joseph Nurkic. So there's a lot of extra minutes, shots, and usage to go around. But if you feel like that the game's lopsided, like fading a bunch of these dudes might be a great play. And that's where if you were to stack expensive guys from Minnesota, Atlanta, then maybe taking a look at the Simons and the Hoods and the Harry Giles of the world, could be interesting pivots if you think it gets out of hand.
Yeah, I mean, I love that call for sure.
Like Harry Giles is not a great NBA player, but remember in the preseason, this dude was dropping 40, 50 points on the regular. If you think this game gets lopsided and Giles plays, say, 16 minutes, 17, if he's running with the scrubs in the fourth quarter, I mean, dude could drop 25 DK points in the fourth quarter alone. It's a GPP play, not something you want to line up in cash games, but, it's worth noting.
And I do also feel like the Kanter fade plays hand in hand a little bit with Portland not playing well. Because I feel like the Kanter not playing well has more to do Portland's not playing well. He's not stopping guys from getting in the inside. He loses run. The game gets out of hand. He loses more run. That's kind of how I'm playing it out in my mind if it happens like that.
I think if Damian Lillard's not making 3-pointers today, then Portland might just not be very good because, Covington, again, wonderful defender, solid NBA player, has not offered a ton offensively to the Portland Trailblazers this year. He's 2 of 20 over his last couple games. I think his shooting percentage for the year is just god awful. So they need Damian to be great.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Doesn't it seem like he's regressed a little bit this year offensively?
Well, I think he's trying to find his way on a new team and he doesn't feel comfortable. He's always been a really streaky 3-point shooter. And he's been off all year. Again, he had a good game against Sacramento, shot 4-7, but he also missed all 5 of his 2-pointers. So I think he'll get better. He just doesn't seem quite 100% comfortable in the new system.
Plenty of games last year before. I mean, I remember when he was when Minnesota was awful. I mean, not that they're good now, but when it was Towns and stuff, and he'd be the only one. He was throwing up 40 to 50s.
I remember when Minnesota was awful. So basically every year without Kevin Garnett.
So today, basically, yeah.
Yeah. Always, constantly, 100% of the time. Yeah. They've been pretty much a joke as a franchise. Other than KG, there's really not much to hang your hat on right there.
No, there's not.
All right. So just to run through San Antonio again real quick. I like Murray. I play Murray a decent amount, but he's also 8,100. It's tough to pay this price for him.
I really hate saying this because I like San Antonio a lot. They've done me very well, but they're basically out of play on this slate because they're really priced up. And, unless you're game stacking or, playing that the other 2 games aren't close, then all of a sudden San Antonio becomes in play if you think the other 2 aren't close. But their prices are just too high. Except for
Yeah. Vasil has played well the last 2 games, and I know they like him and they want to get him established. He's 3,400 with small forward eligibility. I think he'll get next to no ownership because you don't need the cap savings today. So if you're looking to get lucky in a deeper GPP, that's one of the few guys I could take a run on. Calvin Johnson's had some moments this year, but that's a tough roster because he's got way more bad games off of this price tag than he does good.
I mean, these guys are just too expensive, man. DeRozan had been 77, 7,900. Now he's 8,900. Keldon Johnson, 7K. He was like 6,300. They're just priced up. And the NBA, that's, the spend up to be contrarian is just different in NBA than it is certainly MLB, even NFL. It's just, you need a lot of random stuff to happen for San Antonio to be optimal here. It could happen. It's a 3-game slate, but like they're not optimal plays on paper. I know you agree with that.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a question then. You, and only because I've heard you say it 1,000 times, you like teams first game without one of their stars. And for me, like he's a borderline star, but I think he's kind of a little bit of a star. Is he not good enough for him to count in that? Or is it just not a factor for you today in this situation?
They already played like that whole second half with him and won that game without him. So I look at this as like kind of a new situation.
Okay. All right. So if it's me and I'm making a cash lineup right now, fellas, this is kind of how I look to be starting this one. And for paying customers, there will be a write-up. So obviously expect a little bit of change over the next couple hours. But, I'm going to put in Damian Lillard at the point guard position. I think he's going to be very, very popular today without CJ. I'm not scared of the defensive matchup. I think because it's not something he needs to do for the full year, he might just put the weight of the world on his shoulders. He's also really good. And we've seen him with some bad games this year, but a lot of these bad games have simply come from the fact that CJ McCollum has been a revelation this season, and he hasn't had to do as much some of these games. He has to do it today.
No doubt.
I'm going to put my faith in him. And if you don't like him, play GPPs and fade his ass.
Yeah, I'm definitely, looking at tournaments here. I mean, what else is new, but for sure.
Now moving over to the shooting guard position. I think Anthony Edwards is a guy that I'm going to consider right there. And then there's also Gary Trent. So I got to fill the shooting guard and the small forward position. I think those are two guys that are wildly in play for me. I've been riding DeAndre Hunter for a while. He's really started to play, not as well the last couple of games. Doesn't mean that he'll keep up forever. He's a rough roster for me right now. I like the spot for him against Minnesota, but maybe he's just not a 35-point per game guy like he was playing for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think that once we start, and I do think Trae Young is going to start playing better, like the other guys might fall down a little bit.
All right. I got Derek Jones Jr. and Gary Trent right here. Again, if Trent isn't starting and they go with a Hood or a Simons and replace the CJ, then I think Trent gets less love. Like, he's not going to go under-owned because he's been productive this year even with CJ in, but just as kind of a heads up of what his ownership will probably play out.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll probably be a little deeper on Portland than you are. And then at the power forward position, Vanderbilt if he's starting. I mean, I'm going to pretend like Vanderbilt is starting for right now and put him in right there. And then I might easily double up on Bam and Canner right here. And then kind of play out with Miami for the rest of the day. If Tyler Hero plays, I'm kind of interested. And if he's out, I feel pretty comfortable going right back to Goran Dragic, thinking he'll play better. And then it puts me in a weird position because I don't like any of these forwards, so I'm going to have to make some adjustments. It is still so weird to see Blake Griffin as nothing but a catch and shoot guy.
Yeah, it is bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre.
Although I'll give him this. His scores have been solid the last couple of games, other than the game against Utah where it was 86-96. You wouldn't expect people to have good scores. His assist totals have been nice.
Yeah, he's not been bad at all.
It's just weird to watch him play like this.
Very weird.
So that's where I'm sitting early in this morning. And if you're starting a GPP lineup right now, I'm just going to take a guess. It starts Trae Young and D'Angelo Russell.
It does. And then I think I'm going to go with Vanderbilt right away. Thing is, I want more Atlanta exposure because I think they're in such a good spot, but I'm not exactly sure where to go. So I want to see about their news. I mean, Collins and Capella are their next two guys. They're also a little bit pricey. I think those guys are in play if I'm stacking this game, along with like Malik Beasley. Not exactly sure where my priorities are right now. I like the Edwards call a lot. But these three guys are like where I'm looking at hard right now.
It's interesting. And again, I only bring this up because I brought up John Collins in long shots the other day. With Clint Capella out there, like he is just not getting a lot of rebounds. Like they're forcing him to play a little bit more on the perimeter, and I just don't think he's long for this team. I like John Collins, but it kind of seems like this is more Trae Young, Clint Capella, and perimeter players now.
There's also a lot of discontent between Collins and Trae Young, I've heard. Like Collins has been upset about how the team's been running their offense through Trae Young, like too much through Trae Young. I agree with you. I don't think he's long for this team.
Send him to Milwaukee. We will give you DJ Wilson straight up. Let's do this.
He's good. Like
I like Collins.
I ultimately think that he's a better fit than Capella. Like I guess I get it. You know, Capella's the better interior defender, but I like Collins too. I think that they're making a little bit of a mistake with him personally.
Yeah, I mean, I know they like to pick and roll with Trae and Clint Capella, but hey, man. John Collins definitely seems to be going to be on the move eventually.
So the other thing I was going to say just with this lineup right here, like put Dame in here because I really don't love the mid tier. And I do like all three of these guards. Like I don't love this build, but it's doable with guys like Edwards and Vassell, you know. Yeah. And I don't really like the mid tier here. Guys I normally like DeRozan, he's out of play at 9K. And I like these three guards as easily my top three plays on the slate. So this might be where I go.
And then you got Gary Trent or Derek Jones Jr. Because if you're playing Dame, you're playing the game to be semi-competitive. Yeah. So then you don't mind a starter.
No, exactly. And you can still play, you could probably still fit Canner in here if you wanted to go other all cheap guys. It's not going to be easy, but it's probably doable. I mean, yeah
for sure.
You could even go Edwards and a 3K guy, or you could go, Trent and whoever. It's definitely doable.
Vassell and Trent.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and I guess for me, the reason why I think this isn't in play is because I think those guys like Trent, who you talked about a lot, I'm listening to you on that. He's just as valuable as some of these guys that are 5, 6K potentially.
I mean, Gary Trent could play 30 to 35 minutes today. And if he's making his 3-pointers, be good for 35 DK points. Again, he doesn't do a ton besides shoot threes, but he might need to do a little extra today without CJ McCollum and Joseph Nurkic around. Like Portland is now without their second and third best player. So yes, Damian Lillard will do a lot of the dirty work, but it's got to go to a couple other guys at least a little bit. I mean, it can't just be Lillard shooting 38 times today. So I like Lillard a lot. I think he's in a great spot because, he's not going up against, a full strength Boston or the Lakers or anything like that. But he's going to have to get his teammates involved a little bit.
Agreed. One other guy I just want to pull up before we go, and because I don't know if this was blowout or not, Isaiah Stewart at 3,500 for the Pistons. I've noticed he's got 20 plus the past couple of games and 19 plus, excuse me. I guess the Milwaukee game was, if he's going to play 17 to 20 minutes, I don't hate it. He's a guy that can get DFS points pretty quickly.
So I don't think it was blowout. I think it's more, Detroit. They're terrible. So they're going to play around with what they got going on for a little bit. I like Mason Plumlee as a player, but, dude's 30-some years old for a team that is, is much of a rebuild as any team in the NBA right now. So why wouldn't you try to experiment with your younger guys? I love what Jeremy Grant's doing, but how is this helping you get any better, Detroit?
Yeah, they need, in order for Detroit to make the next step, they're going to need one of these guys to come out of nowhere and be really freaking good. Like Donovan Mitchell for Utah or whatever, kind of out of nowhere. And who knows if they have that guy, but I agree. They've got to at least give these guys a run.
Yeah, Blake Griffin, Jeremy Grant, Mason Plumlee, Derrick Rose, these are all guys who can have a role somewhere else and help a good team, but they don't make any sense on a Detroit team. And I also don't love Detroit's younger pieces right now either.
Same. I'll say this about Jeremy Grant. He is, we talk about this. Opportunity means a lot. I never thought that he'd be able to do this. I don't care what opportunity he had. If you told me 3 years ago that between Blake Griffin, Jeremy Grant, Derrick Rose, Mason, all these guys, that Grant was the best fantasy player, I never would have believed you. He's averaging 25 real life points a game. That's wild.
He's been awesome.
He was a 6th, 7th man for a lot of his career, coming off the bench, being an energy guy, defender. For OKC, he was never close to this guy. It's pretty bizarre.
So one of the reasons I just want to bring him up, like, again, he did me great the other day. And, we both love it when we make picks that make us look good. So to all the nice tweets and emails I got, thank you. I appreciate that. But, like, I'm not calling for that today again. I'm not calling for him to replicate this. I want to be very clear on that. Even though Miami's missing a lot of their good players, I do think they pried up today and they play much better defense because Miami's a very good culture. And they're having a really rough season right now, under 500. Butler's played 4 minutes all season. COVID's got guys in and out of the lineup. But I do think that they're going to play very good, hard defense because they got embarrassed by arguably the worst team in the NBA the other day and lost by 20. So that's why I'm not digging on Grant today.
They might roll here. And I think that if the game's close, it's because it's an ugly game.
Probably. That would tend to be anything can happen. Guys can make their threes, but that's how I look at it as well. So I'm not point chasing Grant, even though he was phenomenal the other day. And he's very capable. He's averaging 42 points. So yeah, it seems like he's too expensive, but based on his production this year, he's not. He's had over 30 in every game in recent memory. So including 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games of over 44 points in his last 10.
Yeah, I'll say this, his price isn't as egregious as DeRozan, and I'm a much bigger DeRozan fan than Jeremy Grant, but Grant's more needed for his team. And also, I'm not going to play him here, but if you, there are definitely ways on this slate in tournaments where, both the first game and last game aren't very good. And, this game, just because of that, becomes the best game. If you're multi-entering, I would definitely be looking at guys from this game. And if you're looking at guys from this game, you have to look at Grant because he's Detroit's best player.
He is. And, there are stacks that could work in this game. Let's just say Tyler Hero's out. And you just go, Dragic came off the bench last game, guys, and I would assume he's going to do, they don't want to switch things up too much. You go Dragic, Bam, and then probably a Duncan Robinson. He's a little expensive, but he could shoot 14 threes today.
And still no one's going to play like Derrick Rose, and people won't play Grant at 8K. So, yeah, it's a 3-game slate. They'll get love, but they won't get a lot of love on this slate with Dame and all those other guys being priorities.
And like you mentioned, what if this one's competitive and the others aren't?
Right.
So you can go with these guys right here and then play a Anthony Edwards off the bench and pair him with a Portland guy off the bench or something.
Or a Simons or Trent, just one of those guys that is going to get run no matter what that's cheap. Just an interesting way to look at it because I agree with you. He's too expensive, but yeah, it's just always these 3 gamers always are interesting, the game theory part of it.
Yep, and that's just last point before we hang it up for the day, guys. Game stacking is in more play on 3 and 2 game slates, and what we mean by that is we've watched it all season long, right? The major blowouts. You think about the Clippers rolling on the Pacers last night, and most everybody in that game lost their fourth quarter run. It happens all the time. If you think that happens twice today, or it could, going 5, 6, 7 deep on one game that's competitive and going after the starters in that game is in play. If you feel like 2 of these games get out of hand, if you feel like Atlanta rolls on Minnesota or Miami rolls on Detroit, go heavy on San Antonio, Portland.
What do you think is more likelier? And I in past years, I never would even ask this question. 3 games that are really close or 3 blowouts?
I'm still going to go close because I still think it's I don't have any numbers to back this up, but I still think it's I don't know, 2/3
the
games are semi-competitive, but that's 1 out of 3 games that are massive blowouts.
Blowouts are more noticeable, so we notice them when they happen a lot. But I agree with you. More likely is games being close. That said, it's not an easy answer. If all 3 of these games are 10-plus point discrepancies, I'm not surprised in the least.
Well, and there's only 2 good teams playing today. And you know what I mean? And Portland's missing their best players. They're the one team in the late game that was supposed to make the playoffs. And San Antonio's played well, but at the end of the year, they're not going to be in the playoffs.
There's right now as constructed, none of these teams are legit playoff teams.
Miami's without Butler's not a playoff team.
Exactly, especially if Hero doesn't play. So all these teams are very vulnerable. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I do expect Miami to really tee up here, which is why that game's kind of on the back burner. But, again, maybe they just play really, really well here and they crush it offensively. It's definitely something to consider.
Yeah. All right, guys, that's it for this one. We'll talk to you guys about the night stuff later on.
Thanks, guys.